The rain finds the gap in your collar before you notice you're cold. Just a few degrees at first. Your fingers stiffen slightly around whatever you're holding. You shift your weight, hunch your shoulders, and keep moving, because none of this feels like an emergency. It feels like weather. That instinct to shrug off cold and rain as background noise is one your body doesn't share. Somewhere beneath your awareness, your core temperature is already being defended by systems that evolved for a world with no raincoat, no car, no heated room 20 feet away. Your body is running a survival protocol it has used for hundreds of thousands of years, and it has no idea that help is this close. Now take that same rain, that same drop in temperature, and remove the raincoat, the car, and the heated room entirely. You're alone in a cold, wet landscape. No fire lit, no shelter built, and no one else nearby. This isn't a specific place or a specific year. It's the kind of environment early humans regularly lived in, and the question worth asking is simple. What would actually kill you first? Light is already going. You know enough to know that a wet night without heat is dangerous, so you start doing the obvious things. You look for an overhang, a fallen log, anything that breaks the wind. You gather what fuel you can find, but everything on the ground has been sitting in the rain for hours, and wet wood doesn't want to burn. You try anyway, scraping and striking, losing precious light while you work. Nothing catches. You switch methods. You try friction against a drier piece pulled from the underside of a fallen branch, then try striking stone against stone, hoping for a spark that will hold. Both take real effort, and both fail. Each attempt costs you body heat you can't easily replace, since the work itself makes you sweat slightly under already damp clothing, and that moisture only adds to the problem it was supposed to solve. You're not lazy or incapable. You simply don't have the specific practiced technique that turns wet timber into fire, a skill that normally takes years of trial and correction to build, usually under someone else's guidance. This is where the first real decision gets made badly. Cold, even before it becomes dangerous, dulls judgment. Your hands are stiffening, and the small motor tasks, splitting kindling, shaving dry fiber from wet bark, take longer than they should. You decide to keep moving instead of committing to one shelter spot, hoping you'll find something better. That decision burns energy and daylight you don't have. It's a small, understandable mistake, and it's exactly the kind of mistake cold makes more likely because impaired coordination and clouded decision-making are among the earliest effects of a dropping core temperature, well before shivering stops or confusion sets in fully. You almost turn back toward a rock outcrop you passed earlier, the one spot that looked like real shelter, but by the time you decide it's the right call, you're no longer certain which direction it was in. That single moment of hesitation, deciding, reversing, deciding again, is itself a symptom as much as a mistake. A clear-headed version of you would have chosen once and committed. Tonight you don't get that version. Wet skin loses heat far faster than dry skin, since water conducts heat away from the body much more efficiently than air. In genuinely severe cold, this process can turn dangerous within minutes. In the wet, cold, but not extreme conditions you're actually facing tonight, it more likely unfolds over hours. There's no single countdown clock here. Wind, wetness, exertion, and body fat all shift the math. What doesn't shift is the direction. Your core temperature drifts downward. Your muscles' shivering response eventually can't keep pace. And if nothing intervenes, that decline continues on its own. You make it through the night, barely and mostly by accident, huddled against a rock face that blocked the worst of the wind. Morning arrives gray and slow. And so do you. Your joints feel locked. Your feet are numb enough that you have to look down to confirm they're still moving the way you're telling them to. You take stock, out of habit more than hope, and there's nothing to take stock of. No food, no water carried with you, no tools beyond what's in your hands. The scale of what's ahead of you settles in slowly, the way cold settled in the night before, quietly and without asking permission. You're thirsty. You didn't drink anything yesterday, and the exertion of the night has cost you fluid you can't easily replace. You don't know this terrain, so you don't know where the nearest stream or spring might be. You look for the signs anyone might reach for instinctively. A patch of unusually green vegetation lower in a fold of the land, a line of insects moving with purpose towards some point out of sight, a worn track where animals might have passed on their way to drink. Each of these is a reasonable clue. None of them is a guarantee, and following the wrong one costs you time and effort you don't have to spare. You pick a direction based on a rough guess about where the land slopes downward, since water tends to collect low. It's a reasonable guess. It's also just a guess. Death from dehydration is broadly described as a matter of days, though the range is wide and depends heavily on heat, exertion, overall health, and how quickly the body is losing fluid. There's no fixed number worth memorizing here, only the pattern. Your body needs water constantly, and not knowing where to find it turns an ordinary need into an open-ended risk. Walking on tired legs, in unfamiliar terrain, with your coordination still not fully recovered from the cold night, you misjudge a step on loose rock. Your foot slides, your leg catches against something sharp on the way down, and you tear open a gash along your shin. It isn't catastrophic. It bleeds, it hurts, and you keep moving because you have to. This is the point where the story usually jumps straight to infection and death, and that jump isn't quite honest. A cut like this on its own is rarely a death sentence. Human skin and immune systems are reasonably effective at closing shallow wounds and fighting off ordinary contamination. The real danger sits further down the road, if the wound stays dirty, if it's deep enough to invite deeper contamination, and if bacteria eventually make their way into the bloodstream. In 1941, before antibiotics were in general medical use, doctors treating patients whose blood had already become infected with a common wound-associated bacterium recorded a mortality rate of around 82%. That number describes a very specific, already advanced stage of infection. It says nothing about the odds for the cut on your leg right now, which, cleaned or not, will most likely just start to heal. But you don't have clean water to rinse it, and you don't have anything to bind it with beyond what you're already wearing. By early afternoon, the skin around the edges has started to look slightly swollen and shiny, and it throbs a little with each step, more noticeable now than it was an hour ago. That doesn't mean disaster is coming. Most wounds, even dirty ones, resolve without ever reaching anything close to the bloodstream. It does mean you have a decision to make. Stop and rest the leg, which costs you daylight and progress toward water, or keep walking on it, which risks aggravating something that's currently minor. You choose to keep moving because thirst doesn't wait, and you wrap it as best you can with what you're wearing. By midday, hunger joins the list. You haven't eaten since before the rain started, and the terrain around you doesn't offer anything obviously edible. You try, the way anyone would, to find something. You turn over a few rocks, you eye a distant animal trail, you consider whether you could catch anything moving through the brush. You spend real time and real energy on this, energy you can't easily get back, and none of it produces anything. You can't catch what you can't predict, and you have no tools prepared in advance. No snares, no thrown weapon shaped and balanced ahead of time, nothing but your hands and whatever's within arm's reach. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it's not a personal failure. In one documented sample, Hadza hunters obtained roughly one large animal per 29 hunter days, a rate researcher Kristen Hawks and colleagues recorded directly. Among the ache of Paraguay, studied extensively by anthropologists Hillard Kaplan and Kim Hill, large game hunting did not produce a kill on most individual hunting days at all. These are modern people, not stand-ins for the deep past, but the pattern they reveal is structural. Catching large, fast, wary animals with early tools was unreliable work, even for people who did it constantly and skillfully. It's worth being precise about what an empty-handed hunting day actually meant, though, because it's easy to overstate. A failed hunt didn't necessarily mean a hunter or his family went without food that day. Gathered plants, smaller game, and shares from someone else's earlier success could all fill that gap. The unreliability was real. The disaster wasn't automatic. What made the difference was whether there was anyone else's food, knowledge, or effort available to draw on when your own attempt came up empty, which is exactly what you don't have right now. And this is where the terrain of the problem shifts again, because what's actually missing out here isn't only companionship. It's accumulated knowledge you never had the chance to inherit. Somewhere in a group like this, someone would know which low ground reliably holds water even in a dry stretch because they'd walked this exact landscape 100 times before. Someone would know how to get a fire started from half-wet wood because they'd learned the trick from someone older than them years earlier. Someone would know how to clean and bind a wound properly and which plants nearby might help it along. Someone would also know, without needing to test it, which of the plants around you are safe to eat and which ones only look edible, a distinction that takes generations of trial, error, and shared warning to build safely, and that you have no way of reconstructing on your own in an afternoon. None of that knowledge is instinctive. It's built up over years, passed hand to hand, and it belongs to groups far more than it belongs to any single person, no matter how capable they are. That's the piece a lone individual is actually missing here, more than raw strength or willpower. It's not that people together are simply less afraid or working harder, it's that a group distributes both the physical risk and the accumulated knowledge for solving it so that no single person's bad luck or single gap in experience has to be fatal on its own. Your failed hunt, your untreated cut, your guess about where the water might be, each of these would ordinarily be one data point absorbed by a much larger, more experienced whole. Alone, each one is left standing on its own, with nothing behind it. None of this settles which specific threat comes first. Comparative evidence from studied hunter-gatherer societies today does show illness recorded far more often as a cause of death than predation, sometimes accounting for a large majority of deaths in a given group. But that pattern comes from modern populations living in specific, varied circumstances, and it can't be stretched into a fixed ranking of dangers for every Paleolithic environment that ever existed. What it does suggest is that the quiet, procedural failures, cold, thirst, untreated injury, chronic hunger, deserve far more attention than they usually get in the popular imagination of prehistoric danger. Modern life has quietly dismantled almost this entire chain. Shelter keeps you dry before hypothermia becomes a real possibility. Water sits within reach at almost any hour. Antiseptic and stitches and antibiotics stand between a cut and a bloodstream infection. Food arrives regardless of whether you personally caught or gathered anything today. None of these dangers have disappeared. They've been engineered down to something so reliable you rarely have to think about them at all. So go back to the rain. You're still standing in it, shoulders hunched, fingers stiff, waiting for the discomfort to become an emergency or fade back into nothing. In the version we just walked through, you're facing all of it alone, and the outcome depends entirely on how the weather, the water, and your own choices align. In the far more survivable version, someone nearby already knows where the water is. Someone's hands are faster at the fire than yours, someone notices the cut on your leg before you do, and someone else's failed hunt today doesn't matter because yours didn't fail. The rain hasn't changed. What changed is who's standing in it with you. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one every week, about ancient human behavior, about what your body still remembers, about the gap between the world you were built for and the one you actually live in. If that is something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next one.